Sangye Chedang Sogi Chonam La Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsun Age Jinso Yipe Sonam Rola Penjira Sangye Ndo Paras Sangye Chedang Sogi Chonam Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsun Age Jinso Yipe Sonam Rola Penjira Sangye Ndo Paras Sangye Chedang Sogi Chonam Chanchu Pardo Dani Kyapsun Age Jinso Yipe Sonam Rola Penjira Sangye Ndo Paras Semjen Tamje Dewa Tang Devi Gyutang Dembaraku Semjen Tamje Lungal Tang Lungal Ji Gyutang Trawara Semjen Tamje Lungal Mebe Dewa Tang Mindawa Semjen Tamje Nirin Chadang Nidang Tra Nyamla Nebara Gyuruji Semjen Tam Dewa Tang Devi Gyutang Dembaraku Semjen Tamje Lungal Tang Lungal Ji Gyutang Trawara Semjen Tamje Lungal Mebe Dewa Tang Mindawa Semjen Tamje Nirin Chadang Nidang Tra Nyamla Nebara Gyuruji Semjen Tam Dewa Tang Devi Gyutang Dembara Semjen Tamje Lungal Tang Lungal Ji Gyutang Trawara Semjen Tamje Lungal Meb Dewa Tang Mindawa Semjen Tamje Nirin Chadang Nidang Tra Nyamla Nebara Gyuruji Sajvyoje Joje Medo Odom Jirani Yeleya Bani Sangye Jendo Yedembu Wayu Dragunanda Jinla Chubasha Yedamanguru Ranamendala Ganiyatayami.
Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Until enlightenment, I go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the accumulation of the practices of giving and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. May all sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. This ground spread with incense, adorned with strewn flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, and the sun and the moon. I imagine as a Buddha land, and by offering it to you, may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Thus, meeting the teaching of the peerless teacher is due to the spiritual mentor's kindness. I dedicate this virtue for all living beings to be cared for by excellent spiritual friends. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryata Yami.
Ange tuji nyezongwa tawa tanje pambe chere tambe chini tanje be kodam te la cha cha lo. Ya ta. Kachi penjengi sung redwa. Hina dowa cho sungu. Pande namka kamar sho. Dhuno kunji dhungal kur. Dhungal gecho kambar sho se sung dowa. Penjin, kachi penjin. Sung rezede ka pamunga sung. Sung do ta kanje. Pe te chidi pe yaboji dowa. Marang zu kibu yung duga la nga zu kengbang nga gyal tekbang nga pes jordan shibu yinzanda kengba leya ki nyinga yorwa. Himi leya dala semchen tamche la pe kibu yung da semchen ki katin, semchen ki tuyin, teta la pe dibu deyang teta la pe yungor shos ngu sha duga la kengba ma chagadwa. Dhuna kunji dungar dhungpo yung kabzu la sem yum. Eni soso pe di dhupo diki kenje ne tarung pe dungal maunu denya ke nyanga yore. Wata tende ina, dhuna kunji dunga, wata tende kala tarung pe, dita pe yabuchung song, kiawa nga me le zebare, yabuchung re, tape, higi tula semchen tham chelan dindawe dungal junga yagi, dungal di, dila mimbar shon, di ko chobar shon zan lapsha ina, sem jumba de lea midwa, sem la popa legire, tonang legire, wata dos chene pento chimbo shwe on zar dati yundu samtang thona pe miswe yabodu was sung de kache penjing sung re kache penjin shake series juyor deina yang kache penjin jamba ina mishi.
And so the great master Geshe Penchen said that when I'm happy, then I dedicate this great happiness for the benefit of sentient beings. And when I am suffering, then, and so in remembering to dedicate one's own happiness and thinking of other sentient beings, what is the benefit here? It's that when all is going well and we're happy and everything is just perfect, we really run the risk of becoming very arrogant about this, very inflated and arrogant in our own attitude. And so as an antidote against this, when we're happy, we remember sentient beings, and we think that may this happiness, may the fruition of this happiness actually ripen for the benefit of sentient beings. And when I'm suffering, then also may I, and so we remember when we're happy and things are going well, we remember the kindness and are grateful for all sentient beings, and we actually aspire that they actually may experience the positive fruition. And so when we're suffering, we then, may we remember sentient beings and think that may this suffering my taking on this suffering, may it be the suffering of all sentient beings. May I experience this in place of all sentient beings. And may I actually be very grateful for the suffering. We have gratitude for the suffering as well, thinking, how great, now my previous negative karma has ripened and it has now been exhausted. Additionally, may this suffering take the place of the suffering of all sentient beings. And so this really works so that we don't become discouraged or feel downtrodden when things kind of take a sad turn for us and things are difficult. So we don't feel defeated and discouraged, But actually, we feel inspired. Our karma has now come to exhaustion, and we are aspiring that this actually take the place of the suffering of all other sentient beings. So in that way, actually, it becomes something we become like very inspired to experience. And then the last line of that is, and so when I'm Yankee Chikapoketone.
긴너와 초수 판대 남게 강화쇼 누나 군지 동안 굴 동안 계속 깜빡쇼스.
And so the last line is, may this dry up the ocean of suffering. Okay, Geshe-la, di genus ki triwadire, di kache pension kong di galuparepe sakere kanere.
갸가르케바.
Yeah, okay.
같이 반지나? 같이 반지 샤게 시리 생긴데는 갸르케바지래.
Okay, yeah, as so Janice, I just double checked on your question and everybody, and he did say he was indeed from India, with a name that I had also just quoted, that Indian name. So that reference I found online seems accurate.
샤게 시리. 대패 케바 첨부를 원했잖아.
Yeah, Geshe-la says he was really quite a great expert master.
이 시디 뉴뉴지라 돈다든 디 첨부도 와. 같이 배짱주기 셈당 이제 저한테 배짱주기 셈 냠는 책임지 마다 텐데 삼로 코르타에 빼 가보래. 같이 텐데 삼로 코르투베나 두보연디가라 셈라테즘 시강을 되게 말아. 기부연디가라 텔레강 양배 킹바다 때문에 미게알 핑크도. 이 장주기 셈 생인데 쉬우지 좀 차대어라 된인데. 그뒤나 제도 가르치잖아 셈데 지자거와.
So that particular quote was really, really quite remarkable, because in just a few words, it really carries such great meaning. Yet, except for someone who they themselves have great bodhicitta, who are, someone who really has the very root of the compassionate mindset, unless it's a practitioner like that, this kind of an aspirational thought would never arise unless it's for someone who really is deeply, deeply committed in practicing bodhicitta. And actually, it's when you hold that kind of an attitude and have this kind of an aspiration, it has such power to have your experience be one that when you face difficulties and suffering, it's not a struggle for you. It's not a difficulty, because again, you're aspiring for this to take, the place of all the suffering of sentient beings. So oneself, even though you're facing suffering, doesn't experience great suffering. And not only that, when everything is going so right for you, it also doesn't lead you to a place of being an overinflated attitude and ego and arrogance. And so really, wherever you go, whenever it is, if you have this kind of an attitude and aspiration, be it happiness or sadness, it doesn't have this, you're not going through these great effects and facing difficulties. Actually, you're very relaxed about whatever it is, whether things are going well or whether things aren't going well. So really very, very powerful. And this is comes from this bodhicitta and compassion. So altruism and compassion.
쿵투세 예네메나지 준주세디가라 베 로정야가 쿵투세 예네메나 개바침베 셈게 니베 템비중께 첨부 베 nenga checho chadiore ngade sig marde yoron buchedan sungdo lama tu junju kunu lama tenji gyal sang sungala junju zambane zunde tanda pardo junju nanjin janju semjung yung jen da jung yo marde sungdo 인도가라 시부지 개침부 차디어래. 대나네 땅 와서 문이 장주기 셈 종야기 탑시 연나 맨나 다진 냠제 서다베 준주고 투무만이베 설던 샤교 차디어래. 다진 냠바 제바즈데 다진 냠바데라 니베 시부지 개침부로 와. 다 사무대 땅고다 다즈는 찍부로 와. 랑지 젠스데 타입이 심전 탐제로 와. 그 가격기 심전 탐제다랑 랑지분이나니 강 조치 그래. 심전 탐제 조치도 와. 두씩 섬당다. 아니 젠 가장 나진 냠베 갑돌론 로송. 대화 생내 가서 강가 누르래. 강가는 누구 아래? 대화 민족인 찌에요 말에. 대화도 강가 찬양도 누구야 차고래. 제장 때 인도가 그상 배 시부지 누구도 아니 동알생인데 민도바래 수지나 인도 동알도 빵구와래. 랑기 동알이나 빵고래 쟁기 동알이나 빵고래 민도배 인상 코 빵구로 와. 디소 데이티기 숭도 백 개 전부 다.
And you know, the Buddha Dharma within that which is called the Buddha Dharma, then we have the practice of Bodhichitta, this practice of altruism and compassion. That is something that we study within the great vehicle. And among the texts that express this bodhicitta, these are great texts, with bodhicitta being an incredibly crucial, important point it is really the main point of the great vehicle of the Mahayana. And so as the great Tenzin Gyaltsen said about the text we're studying right now, the Bodicharyaavatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, that since this text has been written, there has not been a greater text. There's nothing that exists since the time this is written that really surpasses this text. And Geshe La says that this is not something that he is just saying that we're saying here. Even His Holiness the Dalai Lama says this, that this is the really the absolute, optimal test on the practice of bodhicitta. So this is really a very, very key text within the Buddha Dharma. And so within the different trainings that we have to train the mind in bodhicitta, altruism and compassion, we have within this text the points of both equalizing ourselves and others and really learning to exchange ourselves with others. And so we have these two things, the equivalence of ourselves and others, and then exchanging ourselves and others. And so these have been key points, and we should think about that. So first, let's think. We think about all sentient beings, and we think that all sentient beings are exactly the same as we ourselves are. So we have these two, self and others. So first think, we have ourselves, which is one individual, and on the other side we have all sentient beings. which is more principal? How many more sentient beings are there than just we ourselves? Actually, when we look at it that way, what's really principal is the purpose of all sentient beings, then that is a much, much greater and principal thing. So that they far outnumber us. So, you know, we think of ourselves as equivalent, although actually they are so many more than we are. We equalize ourselves with them and we see ourselves as equivalent. And then we think about actually, how are we all the same? And it's because we all want the same thing. We all want to find happiness. We all desire the very same thing. We all desire happiness. And in that we are equivalent. Nobody wants to have pain and misery and suffering. We don't want things to go badly in our lives. Not one of us desires that. No one desires that. And so we are the same in that. We are the same in that we don't desire suffering. And therefore, suffering is something to be abandoned. It's something to be abandoned for oneself, and it's something that we work to abandon for others. And why is it? Because none of them want suffering. So we see that we are equal and our desires, and then also we see that not only should we abandon the undesirable for ourselves, we desire it for all.
제가 동al sel야임 sel고야다. 내가 쓸때 두고야 맞다. 답에 두고서 스승 배서진 두고라. 배서지고라. 배서 맞아 답 몰람게는 두야매다 이게겠단 말에. 몰람 답에 도마매바네. 좀 전에 마배고는 몰람데 얘기는 요 강갈로네. 제가 몰람 지부기 팽겨 말해. 스스 다 좋아지고라. 더 좋아지네. 그래서 가르사 니갑라 따거니 망보진 도상 비진 거네 왔다 되게 야는 양도 삼당 거래
디 상게 기콜라 상게 점덴덴 기콜라 니 카레
점덴의 마페 거네 몰람데 양이 망보야레지
오 라소 디 마페 문라
오 마페 원이 답에 야가나 줄루 망보 따르타레 이zo 강감몰 줄루 강갈로는 몰람데 야거와 Manam Champa Cochua Marta, Tos Soachua, the Ketchimbore, Rank Tubuaya, Dungal de Celia get Tapshi, Dewa the Tuya get Tapshi, the Penisiva Ketchimbore. Nenga Chambu in Zanko, repeat to get on the Shibu, Tubungudua, Chunjunala, and Pejalo, Yani and Semna, Samotanga the Pek Ketchimbore. Koran Takmone, Jana, Rasha Nyamba Koran Tuyala, Ripa Mambu, Samu Mambutang Udo. Karsa Sholoka Uju Kosumba take Tedda. Teji Jinji Dungalta, Zalem Lebron Miriam, the 30 of Dungalte, Southern Gendo Zoperca, Terimindo. Akarsa Sholoka
Kupchu go shipa rebe.
What that Patrick? That Gengi Dungal ordered Uju or Ghost Kobjibadre. That Gengi Dungal, Dungali, Dadu Jinsigdoa. Gengi Dungal say or Cardana, Rangi Dungal say Megi Duas, Susu Dungal Anipe, Dungalde, Selgur was. In a Gengi Dungal Selgures. Ani, they want to be at the Tesungdoa. That is Jena Pemberta, Sentin inch, Dalu jeans, Susu Lula, Be Mizabachona, Susu Lui Kazuchu Sungudu. Tapshin Be, Kibuyon Tapshin and Lu Sungu Gorwa.
So these
Jena Gupjibadre.
Gupshipa de Yangre, oh.
Rede, Kobjiba Chimanidre.
Oh, lasso.
What that day down? Konga, Kotu de, Tea Naching to Jetty but. Doing good. There's all good go to in something with a pen miss will catch Budua. Then is it sometimes the same Corina or Jenla Nipe, Roger, Jenla Pember together, Ting kale Teta nyamto niji minam kyanga de permissive kitchen bore. Tiona tini kale ngato jengi dungal seala and pe so hachemo hoji yungroa.
And so here, we talk about these points of, okay, so we're equalizing ourselves and others. And for that reason, we see that their desires are the same. And as we are the same, we accomplish their desires just as we do our own. So we talk about clearing away suffering and accumulating happiness, accomplishing happiness. But this is something that we actually need to put forth effort in. We actually have to do something about it. We can't simply aspire to it or say prayers for this to come about. Because actually, up until the point where the Buddha appeared, for so many years before the Buddha, this is exactly the way the different spiritual traditions were going about things. They would do prayers and rituals and make aspirations. And that was the focus. And yet that didn't necessarily accomplish the desired aim, because you really have to do something. You really have to apply some trainings and condition. You have to actually make effort in certain ways. And so within our text, we've seen in earlier verses where there have been different reasonings, different logical reasonings that were really set out for us to read, for us to contemplate, and for us to training, because we have to retrain our minds. And these were based on reason. And so, this is something that we have to, if we're really going to get there in our mind, in our experience, where all others are equal to us, we see no differences. This is something we really have to put some effort into. This is something we have to retrain and recondition in. And in particular, Geshe notes what would be important for us to reread and then have self-reflection on, and then really, go out there in our day-to-day and really work with these, is that first we have verse number 94 in the same chapter, where it says in the first two lines, and therefore I'll dispel the pain of others. Okay, so we've already said that that was an aim and a goal, but now it gives the reason. And the reason is, for it is simply pain, just like my own. So now we have what we are to do, and we have the reason behind it. And then secondly, so that was in regards to dispelling suffering. And now to bring, accomplish happiness for people, help them be happy, help them, be in a good situation. We have the second two lines. And then others I will aid and benefit. That's the goal. But why? For they are living beings just like my body. And so again, there is the logical reasoning. And so that's a very key verse. And then in verse number 95 and 96, those are backing and support of 94. The first, if we take 94 in two parts, 95 and 96 give you even more reason. It goes more in depth on why to do that. So go back, reread these verses and have personal reflection, have some self-reflection, and then work to actually incorporate those into your activity. And if you can get there in your mind, if this really becomes part of your, your new mission, your new way of thinking, and you really get a taste for this, it's something you really truly desire, and you get there and use your intelligence, use your reasoning. We have the power of intellectual capacity that we can work with. And when you do this and you get there and you get a taste for this, it's amazing and it's very inspiring. You will be so inspired and encouraged. And so Geshe reminds us to go back and reread and revisit those.
와다 또 세대 대저 삼단에 로땅염데 쭉 바이카 커서 그 나진 냠바도 쭉 나다 쟁이베 톱당 라냠임바 대쭉 대쭉네다 제디가라 에베 젠라이 베 펜바타나 케벤 첨부여 와디 통은드가라 다디 펜도데 가려르제 파용화 중성 개상 디나라 파용화 중도와 이 파인데 용해야돼 가르치는 거래. 젠라 세와치 젠라 니지 베 미바 니지기 땅니 젠라 펜버투 용도가라 손음 랍침보사 거와. 아니 자와 가르치잖아. 젠라 펜도 춘춘지나 디베 총나지 마임바. 나베 니 예니베 젠라 펜다는 가 손음 사그레 디 삼루도 장주세비 균땅 말와. 아, 대 고갑을 빼야 후 중소 고갑이 야부 시부지 중소 그 고갑을 딴진지니 펜바다 그러와. 아니 룽알 춘춘지나 단다도 미스버여데 곰소나 룽알 첨부해야 돼. 곰소나 미스버 용말을 락도. 어디서 라진 냠베 펜도들도 펜도에서 펜도 가는 방향 되게 양양도 삼다 로 이 사무단들 로데 디지 하고나 이제는 펜바타용도라 또한 레그리 가난 레그리 지삼디 좋아다 가베고네 이제는 파바타이나 애니베 디 랑라 애니베 가르소레 남민다 때네라 말에 지디와 손음데 톱 전부 시부시 사고래 배 미스베게 첨보래 어디도 쓰지네 그상밖에 간제 다진 냠바 당보검상 오르루 되네 다진 냠베 파윤 되죠래 다 드린 로야 돼 다진 제다한테 누구 와래
오케이 게실라 디 페윤 지모토
페윤 마요나
올라서 디타
타마델라 디저도아 마파데 유전 전다 냠버 홈리 바스인데 그 지들 중우나 미님 레가 가송와 대진 전라 순선다 니지스네 때살자 신데 마바데 땡거래
디 식체 카츠레
지체 전나 팔체르네
디 탕포 팔체 도두체나 탕포 디 소남 삭
오데레데
디 탕포 드네 소남 사야
다 강가 레디는 만드는 디그래 간지 남밀라 마레와다 소남 사야다 데리 마요와 zungal sam go be ko baas go ba chiche teni jendun zuvi zungal chimbo me baas ni che
di tampo di sonam di tampo gonda di jendun
ala
ni pesu podo
jendun chidu jo wala zungal chimbo me baas inde tire teni dewa chod jendun ju baas inde ten rangi tepa jivar che baas inde lenda namila merawate jibare teni ngapa ene be yuzendana rajeng nyambar ogomri baas inde ngapare payunga
okay
solo ko chana
Di tanta portuguesa?
Yada chupa de doa. Tamade. Chupa chuchi chungi teso lege orda. Kanche te getting younger shorgani do kudoa.
And so when it comes to gaining this equanimity of mind, meaning that there is total equality with regards to things if they have any bearing on yourself or others, there is no difference. There is total equanimity. And not only that, one sees that the equality in terms of rights, they have the same rights as oneself does to, so in that way too, there's equal ground. And so to benefit, so we've learned about benefiting others equally to oneself and how to train in the mind to get oneself there. And we've seen all these reasonings, as we've just mentioned, for example, in 95, 96, 97, that help us to train our mind and see the reasons. And then after that, we also examined that there were 5 main categories of qualities, like of benefit actually, that oneself would receive. What are the benefits of doing this? How is it beneficial to one? And so, you know, for example, out of love and compassion, wishing to benefit others, then there's great, you know, there's great merit. There is, you know, merit. It's a very meritorious action. So one gains merit. And one especially gains merit when one does not wish for any fruition, you know, anything karmic fruition or return as well. So that's another benefit. And then also when one has equalized self with others, one can bear anything. One has really can take on suffering and not be affected. As much suffering, you know, as one takes on, one can do it and one doesn't get affected. And as it's also said in, you know, in the text, whatever we habituate to becomes just like second nature for us. So if we start with a small suffering and learning to take it on, then we can really take on more and more suffering. And so it brings benefit, and one becomes very inspired. And one actually looks forward to this. One, through great delight, helps others. And then the 5th is that there is great, you know, it becomes very meaningful to become trained in and conditioned in this kind of new mission in self and others being equal. But in any event, there are 5 altogether, and we started looking at those at 111, Geshe-la, the Yadang Chu? Okay. So from so what really points to those is 110, 111, and 112. At that point, we were talking about these different benefits. And so now we enter Ogondak Chik Jason. And so now at this point, we enter in, so I didn't finish, so sorry about that. And so we have spoken about the qualities of equalizing self and others, and now we look specifically at exchanging self and other at 113.
Dio Mare. That's Jaboloya the current Jabologore, Samlu Jabologore. Tanda Barduangazo Ranchins in Shuchu, Chin in Dene, Jenden the Cabazo, Randan Zoyomara. Rangit and the Mazatarun Coronere. Tubarangit, Jibarangit Tunjita, Tuajing, Tunjib, Dingini Cabertois, the Junjuna Sungudua.
Oh, Kali Kali.
Jiba, Rangit Tunjitan. Tuajing, Tunjib, Dingini Cabertois.
Oh, lasso, yeah.
Chesa, that in the gala, Jiba, Sidepe, Ranchin Shu Chumbu, Jendi Jiba Suki, Tandabardo Randan Jerde, Keke Nime Jenderes. Randan Mazo, Jenden Mazo. Tuan Sanki Chumdende, Jenden Bajinzene, Tunin Zonane Sangivares. Chazan Ranchinzin de, Ta Lode Torche, Ranchinzin Lode Kato to Toriache, Jenchinzin Lode, Makiba Kibrache, Kepa Nyamba Mebache, Kondo Pelgures, Tisungor, Ingu. Jiboloya, Ranchinzin Lodan. Jenchinzin Lonita, Kosan Jaboloyare.
So now we're trading out. We are entering into the training of trading out. What's being traded here? We're not, so we're talking about trading ourselves with others. It's not our bodies that we're exchanging and trading out. We're not exchanging places and trading places where we stay or live. That's not at all what we're exchanging out in trading. What we're exchanging is our mental attitude, the way we think, what we ordinarily place predominantly, we are now placing at the bottom. And what we usually place at the bottom, we are placing at the top. And these two things are our own self-purpose and self-agenda, and others' purpose and others' agenda. Actually, because we take our own agenda as something of predominant importance, it is for this very reason that we are circling in samsara and that we have been circling in samsara. It's because of this. And actually, as it is also said elsewhere in this text, the difference between wandering beings and Buddhas is that those wandering in samsara place their own self-importance or their own agenda themselves as most important, where Buddhas place others as most important. And so, the Buddhas, so we constantly accomplish our own purpose, and very seldom do we accomplish others' purpose. But the Buddhas work solely for the purpose of sentient beings, and that is how the Buddha became enlightened. So this strong self-cherishing that we have, we need to destroy it. And we need to then change it out for something. We have to exchange it. And what we're changing it out with is, instead of self-cherishing, now taking on other cherishing, making our new agenda others, not ourselves. And so this is what we need to do.
Rajin Jeba Tedala, subject ni tamne, tambo, Dorthem Bada Gebrashi Basity, ni shame. And in Dorthem Badala, and in Rajin Jetsultera, Telter, Kunduru Gutens, the Tas Nishikdoa. Ta Tambo and Ben, Dorthen City, Carres, the Gala, you gather Chusum, but then Dorthen City. Northern City.
So in terms of exchanging self and others, there's two categories here. It's explained briefly, so in some like a brief expression, and then there is the more elaborate explanation. We start here with the way to exchange self and others in the brief explanation. And within that, there are two subcategories here: the way to do it and the reasons for doing it.
어다 너땡기 치데 가르에라더나 바니 켄신 현재 전라 양스 라 란치 번지미 진진 로데라 거래 란치 번지미 진진 로데 미스베 자균 탐지기 자와서 지레라래 전라 양 연den게도다 젠체 번지미 로데 연den기 야소나진 통구레스 시제네 다 ranjin yung su torwa tang teni indra ranche pranjin bi chinjinde ko jungsa de ran karza ranjin ran ranjin be ranjin de ki gor wa ranchin jinde cheza teni indra ranjin de torgo gures mazo gures ko hyunje inza ko yoya yude mazo gures jena pane gombar chasite che jenche pranjin ba de be yunding 탐제 계사 인자 뒤에는 배 땅도 랑고래 대배 그뒤에 나가서 데라 삼당고래라래.
And so we pick this up in 113, where it starts out saying, perceiving now the faults possessed by I and the qualities, the ocean of good qualities that are in other. And so first we look at that, the faults possessed by the I. Actually, this is said to be the root of all faults, is this clinging to a self, is said to be the very root of all faults, and caring about others said to be the very ocean of qualities. And so first looking at the root of all faults, this perceiving of an I and clinging, this notion, this notion of solid clinging to this feeling and sense of this independent I, this is something, because it is the very, the place from where all other faults arise, this is something that needs to be destroyed. This is something that needs to be eliminated. And because caring about others is the very ocean of qualities, as it was actually said earlier, that we need to, where it has not arisen, may it arise and ever increase further and further. So this caring about others is something we have to nurture and encourage on, and we have to really take this up.
Geshe chekawa ge lojon tendimman lelen tamche chilanda se ta kyun tamche yonsa de ran chinjin deres yongone rwa mi ran chinjin shu chombo jina te timidela garsore trobong she nyung cha de ore
Karela
ran chinjin shu chombo yonge ran chinjin wang jen la pa 통중 제기래 개수 제기래 차단 제기래 신 대지들가 콜로 trouble 뭐시는 빼 뉴뉴래 다들 들 란친진 생데 빼 경기 자와래라래 경기 자와
랑기 첸체네
란친진 오 딘 라마 쳬베는 데도아 라마 쳬베 랑이 친진 후박 군기로 만남 진진 연된 군기 진 대치 다진 점베 나저기 냠ling ingbo lembar chingi lop zer sungdo lama chupa ye oda lama chupe sholo kakaza ina kancha rangi chinzi gupak kungi lo manam chinzi yenden kungi jing manam chinzi sida yenche pranjimbe chinzin des yenche pranjimbe lo de yenden ta chigi jizare islare jinga yena tela tondo karita me kigrwa yen chinzi yena ba gawa tamche yongirelare 제단 때리 인들라 다신 제과데 pe misbe kechemboris samrade ranchinjin torche jenchinjin tangdonglen gwa pe misbe kechemborela ran dajenjem dajen rannichinde gopa konjelo manamjinde yenden konjin tichir dajenjembe najurki nyamle ningbo lember chingelops nyamle nan ningbo tilda tappe chete chegure selabre the missive ketchumore.
So also Geshe Chikawa said within the 8-point mind training,
7-point
mind training, he pointed out within the 7-point mind training that the very basis, the very place from where springs forth all faults is the self-cherishing mind. You think about that person who is really self-cherishing, thinks that they're all high and mighty and all that and cares so much about themselves. What they really involve themselves so much with is putting down others, talking down about others, feeling competitive, like feeling aversion, repulsion, and hatred towards others, and just really denigrating them. They have no friends. And so many faults actually come from this self-cherishing mind, as Geshe Chikawa has said, and also in the Lama Chupa text, and the Guru Puja text, and I will look later for the exact quote, and I will get it to all of you. There is a particular verse that points out the faults, again, of caring so much about oneself. And it's an aspiration prayer that one is able to free themselves of the self-cherishing attitude, that one is able to cultivate the other cherishing attitude, and that one may be blessed to realize this very inner essence, inner essential meaning or yoga of the practice. And so it's this particular quote within the Guru Puja is speaking exactly to what we're saying here about the faults. The very root of all faults is self-cherishing attitude.
That was ranching one get the control the lunch or like control Jenny Michila, like to be a back covery.
Kare kapore?
Lega Karena to cover. Control and Midela, Tobo Mare, Roching in your mare, Kangarova.
Lega Julia.
Oh, didn't you call it? Ranching saying this. Samlin and some look top passion there. That one is some look jobbery. Ranchipo, sometime they go. Ranching is ever to do. What that is okay when a Nembuchin sometime way chagor is.
This is so true, really. Let's just think about it on a practical, life experience level. When there's someone who is just so wrapped up in themselves and it's all about themselves, actually in the end, they can't accomplish anything. Anything they try to accomplish, they can't do it because they've turned, through this attitude, they've turned everyone else away from them. So there's no one that wants to step in and help them. So, they've turned everyone away. And really, if you think about this holding this kind of an attitude, it's so sad, really. It's really one of the most measly and really, really sad kind of attitudes that one can carry. So think about this through reading and rereading these stanzas. Think about this. Think about it very, very, very carefully. Because basing ourselves constantly in our own agenda is what we're talking about, and is really the root cause of all the other faults.
Oda Sholoka Karza Gadan Chujibade. Ta Karanan Dordenla subject ni yobenane, ta Rajan Jebisuda, Delta Kunduru Gusenza Pe Rajan Jena, Comia Yores. What a Kunduru, they competive the higris de la Genjins in a higri competent to the higris de la God.
Mm-hmm. And so now I just want to finish reading 113 and we'll go to 114. And 113 ends, I shall lay aside all love of self and gain the habit of adopting other beings. And so when we come to verse 113, this explains how there is a way to familiarize and make it a habit, make it our new habit, our new mission that will become secondhand of really entering into this new way of being, as having others as important as we are. And so this little subcategory of how we can habituate to this. So what this means is that if we take up these trainings, actually there is a way for us to evolve, to have our mindset and our attitude evolve. It can evolve.
Jen Jinjin the Samjan Tayaba Mamboji de Gala, the Japanese the Kabur water by young Marwata, the Yungris. Can you see Yungrisana? Maranzo, Lula Inayan, Lula Chashipe Mambur, Campada La Padon Godan, the Yanla and Yinlas the Pay, Machashi Mambur, Visa the cheat Zinche, and he pay soon to go to us. Then I in Samjan the Bay. Jinju to the Samjan Tanjas and Miben Jushayana, Tagarangi, Kochodugre, Selagor, Tatonda de Telagore. Jitter Lapa La Sopa, Luki Yenla, in the terrace, Pijin Roa, Yenla to Chichi, Lucin, Nam in the S. What that is, Sidigala, check. Maranzo Samjan Tanjas and Miben Judana, Samjan Tamjagi, Miben Suyong de Gala, the Dala and Bear. Pentaga Samlode, laying grace. Inji be me redden Miss Chegum Marella.
Okay.
Lila and Panganos, Louis Sidigala, Kumbur Chidro, Louis Sidi Chashin, something Umida. What a terror. Chidan, Lila Be, Miss Garner, Miss Kargu Mambu Yorde, Louis Sidi Chidu, DJ and Samdana. We soon to the arts. Then I in some time, sometimes me being a Jew, Miola Jew, Lucena, and the Tontachi to tell and bed, Jamba home to Gure, Niji home to Gure, and Sewa home to Gure. What a Tuscini? The young to Gure Labre. Combores.
So in the next verse, verse number 114, basically what's being said is that, so for example, if we think about our bodies, we can look at our own bodies and see that there are all different, separate, unique, distinct parts of our body. There are hands and fingers and arms and legs and a head. We can think about all those different components of our body. We can think about our body as a whole. And this is what's being said here. When we talk about exchanging self and others, and we might talk about benefiting all other sentient beings, all limitless sentient beings, one may think, well, that will never happen. How can I ever be able to get there in my head? But yes, you can. Absolutely. Our attitude can totally evolve, very much so, because actually when we think about our body, we basically just think about our body as a whole. I need to take care of myself. We take care of ourselves and protect our body. When we do, we think of it as a whole. And similar to that, in having love and compassion and caring, we think of all living beings, all life. I need to love and protect and care about all life. That's all we need to do. We don't have to think about, oh, every person over here and every person over here, and I need to love this. And we don't have to do that. We just think all life, all living beings. I need to love them and care for them. And so it's a very simple shift like that. But what this does is it really can transform our mental attitude. It can really help us evolve in our attitude. Very simple shift so that we care about all.
어다 때려 답 또서 군산 단계 계속.
Okay, shall we take a break here, everyone? Let's take a little break for a little bit. 10 minutes or so, as we usually do. Okay, maybe I will look for that verse that Geshe mentioned.
랑이 진진 우법군지 오고 만남 진진 연den군지 징 대칠 다신 젬베 날저지 냠레 님불렘버 징길로
So,
할저 배정나 이는 배정인도 니는 지시 슈구 급죽급진 강도
Gupchugu Gukachi?
급죽급진
Gupchun.
아 때리면서 랑이 진진 랑이 슈구야 야빠 슈구 셜레야
Oh, that's all. Okay. Rangni Chinzin Gupa Kungi Go. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's all. Oh, okay. Now, Jola, yeah.
급죽급진들로나 닝지부도 대닝지부도 랑이 찌브른데 비존인데 민들둥알 기회 유통네 레렌 달라 콘도 존재제 단진 던진 점버 징길로 생도 던 첨부질라 섬 당구다 단진데 뭐네 던 첨버다 단진데
Chugup then pa eh.
급든 바데
Okay, Palche Jella, any Geshe de ring, who was it? Palche.
게 오마레 전부 주고디 예버시베 갑둘에 양거리 용거리게
Oh, la so no dimare de ringi cola. Lama suresana. Kache pension.
같이 벤진
Kache pension ki sikje di ani ngama kerang palche di ani song dunga kongi dunga ko dunga jamso kamparcho kina dewa sosungo.
반대는 꽉 먹어서
Di chikpare di kakare.
어디 직발에
Chikpare di kache.
마마가 수승인 바다 하고메 이게
Laso.
밥봉게 배자지는 밥봉게 로정 뜬디면 되는도 같이 벤진 되네
Okay. Dunga kungi dungyal kar, dungyal
Oh.
jamso kemparsho, kina dewa tsosungo.
Pande namka kanwarsho.
Oh, lasso, okay.
Maman ma ge nga kache tu tsompa po surzen tsompa nga ha gumelai.
Oh, okay. Really. Oh, yeah.
Tringe lojon tundi men dewa ngoti go tundi mena kacha panjeng sungle ze changshandu.
Okay.
다 같이 벤진데 양 잠바여는 미시 받아도 뭐도 같이 벤진 샤게 시리즈 되어라. 다데 이나니 빼면서 개 버점 버려.
Okay.
바기는 바본가게 같이 벤진 송래세 마도민도
Uh-huh.
로종 던리면 되와라. 에 바본가 대쟁인배 로종 던리면 되와. 어디는 장샤도.
Oh, lasso.
지한디 저 중앙 던딘등 그래.
Oh, lasso. Uh-huh. Okay.
나가마 저 ngwa 통하는마도 좀이나 하고 마서 막이 깨지티도 좀 봐봐 하고 매 원. 다들이 하고 그래.
Okay. Lasso. Tisiti takta bed.
지다다래.
Dunga kungi dungyal kor, dunga jamso kemparsho,
누나 군지말 구르스. 누 샘탐제 누날데 니가 꽂혀버셔서 삼땅 구레스. 누나 군지말 구 누날 계속 감버셔스. 희나 내와 소승어 판데 남가 감버셔스.
Yeah. So I don't know if people are back. I'll wait till everyone is back, but just to fill you in, I was just looking for, yeah, most people are not back, I think, but I was just looking for the two things that Geshe last cited. One of them was from the Guru Puja, and one of them was from Kache, is it Kache Pension?
같이 벤진이야.
Kache Pension. So we were just clarifying that so I can get that to you. Nigesela, Pandeshu Chikir. And six din ang pena kina. There was soksu ngo. Dene de kapsu soksu sana.
소스는 semchen 탐제 용수 망부루루 쟁들 소올라 그러와.
So okay.
semchen 탐제 너무 그래스.
Okay.
기부 용어다 빼 란지부 나디 펜토도 나지 보는 용어 셔 맞아. semchen 탐제는 디 개회서와 semchen 탐제라 용어 쇼세 뭐야레스.
Okay.
딩어이나 고 손님 개침부 사그러와. 긴나 대와 초승모 다페 semchen 탐제라 니지곰겐지나 어디 남인지 니부르 빼야버리 서서섬다 고고매야 도와.
Okay.
디디인디가라 란진딜라 기니 라바투구미도 semchen 탐제 라용디가라 란진디 빼때게때 란슈기 현통 고현진인자 고현 콜라페 군협 러와게와 메겐 자로도 미시브게 치므르다 이 시디베 시니바 첸지레샤 마코디 셈라 삼루지 조인사르데 공아 좀바부 같이 지기도 주스무르자 나 셰메 비링이 아버지라스다
Danda chik pare.
돈다치 바래.
So maybe let me just see I think most everyone is back. So anyways, I'll fill you in on what Geshe-la was just saying, and I can post it to the IBC. I think it's the study group also. So I can put it there as well if you want to refer to it at another time. So Geshe-la, at the very beginning of the teaching today, he opened with that quote from, where's the quote from Geshe-la? Yeah, from Kache Penshin. So he opened with that quote, and so I actually found it in my notes from another week. So I feel like, it's just much easier for me to directly translate it when I have the actual quote in front of me. And so the quote that Geshe-la said is, just essentially so meaningful and works to completely counteract a self-cherishing attitude, is this quote that says, when I am suffering, I take it on as the pain and misery of all sentient beings. May the ocean of suffering be dried up. When I'm happy, I dedicate it to all sentient beings. May this benefit and happiness fill the entire reaches of space. And so Geshe-la was just saying that, when you think like this, so whether we're happy or sad, where have we turned our mind? We've turned our mind to others. When we're suffering, we think about others. May it be the suffering of all beings. When we're happy, we've thought of others. May I dedicate it to all sentient beings. How, when you're thinking like this, there's no possibility of thinking about yourself, because you've already turned your thought to others. And Geshe-la said, additionally, because this is such a genuine aspiration that we're aspiring in that moment, that any benefit, that one has, or happiness right now, I dedicate it for all sentient beings. You're not wishing for anything in return. There's no wish for reciprocal, payback to oneself. So therefore, actually, it's so meritorious. The merit one does end up receiving is really very, very great. And so again, I'll get that on the website later on in the week. And then in the Guru Puja, the quote that Geshe-la again said is exactly points to what we're talking about here with exchanging self for others, which means exchanging a self-cherishing attitude into an other-cherishing attitude, is verse number 94. And it says, since cherishing ourselves is the doorway to all torment, while cherishing our mothers is the foundation of all that is good, we seek your blessings to make our core practice the yoga of exchanging self for others.
Yeah, ta ye prashipadala nasi subject pe mangpo yara ta ina subject mangpo to kale ki ongre ye prashipadala nasi ke subject sumche tela tangpo tala yeshe tan tundi niche tela pe mangpo che ne ni ta jen chinjin kom parche baase da ta tela jen chinjin kom goya dala subject ngai ongore pe nenga chambore jen chinjin kom goya 또 꼼배속이 희기를 알아. 마감에 용어 말아. 그럼 그상아마 파긴 로서. 꼼나 라워 마기도 뭐에다가 요마 인저 승부도. 야트 좀 지와라기. 자상 꼼고야 돼. 미스베 전진진이나 꼼고그레스 다들라고 그래. 다 딜라네 subject 전진진 꼼버쳐와달 subject 나이베 땅보데 라젠 진이신 lumba jiwarche baasi da tatare rajin jit singende jet tubure lokombe sabgi te higiri ist that is shologa chabaina shologa jongadang jujugu kangpa tangbuni de yongwa
Jongadang chujukpa kangpa
kampa tangponyi de. Shologa yadan chongadang, yadan chutugu kampa tangponyi de. Tadi ngaso ro etubche de lo etubche de mandacha samtos tangwa de pe misu ke chimbra. Tadi ki kurampa chiltar dame luin de las. Ta dadu modu be luin de la kombe onge nge luis higi ores lo. 곰베 다기 로중와 대신 선전 전라양 곰베 달로 지미케스 제단 선전 전라양 젠제브른 멜로데 베 곰바케 주고 있나 전라 로다랑 부부두데서 젠 차디어로 원했잖아 란도 유타데르와 니 부부두 세디제다 셈나 직 이동와지 차량도 갈라 벨레페 로다냐 보시고지 레용도 와다 때내지 곰바케 고레스 델터 나니 젠기던 지경 모사르 롬민중스 답에 젠라베 펜바투베 젠라 펜토제야 돼 모사르와 메도 중어 차디어레스 데엔베 롬바 지기어 마레스 네체인스야 네체인 아이지 펜바투빈 라데나 양 란진질 투는 거다 이 데네 삼도 땅겨 마레스 젠라페 삼타요도 갈라 티페 틴데베 삼로데 할레베 메토 중앙 모터와 얌첨보레 라브레 디 디데 제거레스 Wata te la gar, pe ya budu ati zi.
So now we enter into the next category of the more extensive explanation and points supporting the trainings of exchanging self and others. Within the more extensive category, there again are many more subcategories. The first subcategory we look at has 5 different points within it, and we enter the first point here, where we're looking at verses 115 and the first 2 lines of 116. And so really what we're getting into here is about how we make something become second nature, how it is just our habit to think like that or do it like that, to just, familiarize so much with it that it just becomes the way we do something or think about something. And again, Geshe cites and refers to the quote from, also from Master Shantideva, where he says that there is nothing that through habituation will not become easy. And so what it really has to do with is it has to do with familiarization. It has to do with repetition and familiarization. Just, doing it over and over again, kind of like drills, how we would do them over and over again. And so first we look at the very terms and notions that we have created of self and other, that we have already habituated in a particular way, and then retraining ourselves using these notions of self and other. And, before we enter into all of these various stanzas that will have these different subcategories and trainings, Geshe cautions and advises that these are things that aren't easy for us to comprehend in the beginning, wrap our heads around, or at least we need to really make them sink in. And because that's the case, this is something that we need to, really return to. We can't just go over it once and leave it at that. Self-reflect about these things. Really work with them and see, how it's fitting with your current kind of worldview and your notions and view of things. So keep going over them again and again. Because right now, as it says in our text in 115, it says, just as in connection with this form, devoid of a self, my sense of I arose through strong habituation. Why should not the thought of I, through habit, not arise related to another? So now, because we have this body, we carry this along with us, we've created a notion of an I. Like, this is what's mine. This body is mine. This is what's mine. And therefore, this is what we hold as precious, and this is what we cherish, and this is what we have like a closeness to. But why can't we create that same thought with other? And so then in the next beginning of the next stanza, thus when I work for others' sake, there'll be no sense of boasting and self-congratulations. So when we now associate this feeling of closeness and specialness and cherishing, not with this form that we carry around with us, but we associate it with all others. Whenever we help them or do something good or beneficial, a good deed, there will be no, oh, look what I did. Oh, look at me. No pats on the back, no boasting, looking for recognition and so forth. We'll just naturally do it. So really to help others is just going to be like what was in the past, helping ourselves.
다 진진진 콤버쳐 받아라 subject ngayo benani 다 니파 남밀라 밀테퍼 콤나 베퍼 담바 신데르다 남밀라 마타지 콤나 베구레스 다다 담바스 다데레 다테 솔로가 야다 주투데 감바 치마니다 솔로가 야다 죽든데 용거래 와다테 남밀라 마레아데 따 전주기 쌤이 냠랭게 띵내지리다 에케 전부 차디어래 맞어 때 남민 디불레레소나 아야 란진진 투은 거라 나이키 부용그리 세데 삼데 코르은 거라 란진진 비타로 당도 다 남민데 텐데 베다 수수적 쌤닝니 베 제데 피타보지데 베 디부 라 레와 마게브제 남민데 데베 기부용그리스 텐데 레와 마게데 제샤이나 베 최대 양다 바차고래 어때디 그상 보기나 펜도나 가르사 라진 냠바곰베 파이나라 남밀레 메라와데 중소 디불레 메라와 남밀레 메라와 띵양 교령도 군nem보지 진이 가르비철레 낸덴진이 숨고아래 베미시베 깨침버래 바니 진이 제자나 렌라라와 미중진세 따때 숨고 가르잖아 수수 칼아서 디갈라 나 칼아서네 나 제만 디부 아버지 용그래서 내려와 개가 엄마와 돈다 칼아도 쪼가 야지 버려 리서야지 버려 어다 때나신데스 디위 질터 충우나 민일라야 다송 와스 다 칭은 받던다 춘춘지 칭은 바지니나 텔라페 파게 민예 바주이나 텔라 조바 공부거려 조sem체네 애니페 소소 콘로단 텐데 깨마주지 숭구레스 대신 롤라 샘숭다 니시sem니 콤버자스 다 샘숭야 샘숭세다 니제다 때가 차텔다 니제까지 투두 벨마제디 니지고 콤바이나 되니 니제디게 가르라 참 니지 고메나 젠기 동알 미즈바지 요라 젠기 동알 미즈바지 깨어도 가라 젠기 티 동알데 세알 랑 베게 dumbayo inza 젠기 가르지 라비나 이 테이프 셈나 주부요 말에 니지 때 미시버 깨침 붙여야 되대 니지 균도 니지 장이나 당가라서 단데 니니셰베 니지데 초스만우 니지 차디거래
라
초스만우 니지 심전타 젤리 캡 니지
조리메파
니지
올라서
그마다 리지기 아니 니가라 니지지 두루 심전도라 니지 지금 말아 무슨다 된데라 맞다 타나 무슨 인제네 심전타 젤라 중얼 센데기로지데 와다테 니지데 곰구레스 nempochung sungwa nen de gena sungora janju kisem yongda mayong zeme nijel thubares ti zawa nijin des
So now, within the more extensive explanation on the trainings of exchanging oneself and others, we come to the second point, or subcategory within that, which is to not wish or have hope for the return of any kind of fruition for oneself when one is benefiting others, for example. And also the pledge to, actually put forth that effort and strive to others' benefit without hope for return or any fruition. And this is within the last two of verse 116, and the paragraph or stanza, the complete stanza of 17, where we're not wishing for the return of anything. We're not looking for anything in return. This really gets to the heart of what bodhicitta is. This gets to the depths of bodhicitta. Because when we do something, and even if there's even any wish or a shadow of a wish or thought about anything for ourselves in all of this, then, or that, we get something from it, or, there's some kind of karmic fruition, then we've turned again to thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about ourselves again. And what makes authentic, sincere compassion is when we're completely happy to do it, just to do it, just to help someone, to help them, through their problem, through their difficulty, without thinking about oneself whatsoever. This is what real, sincere compassion in bodhicitta really, it comes down to. And so here we have in verse 116, where it says, it is just as when I feed myself, I don't expect to be rewarded. And so here we're returning to, talking about rewards, karmic fruitions for oneself. And back a little while ago, a few verses ago, we were also, Shantideva was also speaking about how whenever we attach a wish to get something back, so we talked about that before. So you can see it's a really important point, something we're revisiting now more in detail. And this is so true, right? When we make dinner for ourselves, we're not looking for others to say, oh, wow, you're so great. Look what you did. You cooked dinner for yourself. Basically, we're just trying to get some food because we're hungry. And so we don't expect any reward, and we should see it the same way when we're doing something that helps someone else. See it exactly the same way, just as like when we cook dinner for ourselves, not expecting to be, it to be remarked on by others. And then continuing on in the text. Just as I defend myself, therefore, from all unpleasant happenings, however small, likewise I shall act for others' sake to guard and protect them with compassion. And so here in these beautiful words, we again see about, protecting and guarding with compassion. So this is using tolerance against any kind of anger, any kind of irritation towards others. When we have a kind of compassion that is not tainted with that, then it won't be difficult to help others, to take on whatever it is to help them through something. Because what drives this is true and authentic compassion, and we will do anything to help others through a difficult time. And when we say help others, then this also doesn't mean just this whole section or category of those that we are generating this feeling towards, like I'll help all other people, and I, definitely can do that, but forget about these animals. And when it comes to bugs and spiders, no way. So it's not like this. This is a compassion that cares about all living beings. Even the littlest bugs. A life is a life, and we think that we will help all living beings. And when this is something, when we have genuine compassion, so actually this is what we need. So this is what's necessary. And in the ornament of the sutras, there's also a very beautiful verse that says, so what does it come down to, whether or not one has bodhicitta or it doesn't have bodhicitta? The root of bodhicitta comes down to compassion. And so it's this empathy and compassion for others behind that supports authentic bodhicitta.
저장 니지 미바 개치 중 시부도와 니지라 미바 개치 중와 니지데 에 미바 치중 개발 전부 차래 또 자주기 생기 자와제비 니지데 미바 개천부 시부 선전 탐적이 미변의 중앙들가 미울 중다 시부 개천부 차바래.
So we speak about the perspective of compassion and opening ourselves up to a broader compassion. When we have great extensive compassion, this is a perspective of the great vehicle, and it's also a perspective that is so powerful, that really has such great power and ability behind it, because we think about such an extensive perspective of wish to benefit that encompasses all. There's none left out. All life, and that's really, it's humongous. It's just an incredibly open, powerful perspective.
Yeah, that Sumbade. That's a number. Jinchibran Zimbadalata, subject 9 and Sumbade, Jendin Cheter Jabas, Tape, Jinchibran Zina, Jendin Pe. Lapchimuchi to Reela. Devin Gumbo Cherezi, Tuji Chimbin Roais, Kurginji Bam, Selvager, Arangitse and Chingila Apps. That the Karalagor Zidigala. That Chidane, Devin Gumbo Cherezi, Gumbo Cherezi, Genre Zik Siadla, Mone, Pergele Samlo Mambo Tangwa Chagore. Chen said me, Rova, Mazumi. Re said me, Mizur Sigor, Mizur. Chengi Rema said in the Lagora. Mix Chengi Tazur, Chengi Rema. Cherizigi, Sanjanta, Chelape, Katuina, Chengi Tazur Nizidi or is, Nije Malabachene. Sanjan Tamjala. Cheza, Tindu Indigala, Doing Gumbo Cherezi.
Did Zik.
Oh, Zik Sidigala, Jengi Tazur name, Pe Malobachena Katuina, Tuisunga Zid, Pe Sanjan Tamjal Zidi or is, Zumal Seriage. Cheza, Tuji Chimbin Roy, Korginji Bas, Selvichir, Arangitse and Jingilovs, Tape, Jerizigi Tab. Senam, Senga, Yani, Zunga. Tendiji Tawaina, so Magi Bada, Tendion Catala, Tetanetiki, and Pe, and Jibada take it sell to grace. Don't Bogo Bendenala, the Luntan, Sunshandu, Tezo.
Kabbalah?
Zomboko Bendo, Zomboko Puzzle and Dojiare.
Okay.
Dino Sundu, Tepa Pagi, Junjun Deva Jamben and do take it.
Okay.
What are those Chidigalang around so you do money tangina? She would depend on Chambore. What are the teacher? What are Kaje? Money tangina? Cheriziki Zuma, Igitumade, Shibuji Nijikeala, Penlap Chambore. The Indigalata, Sani Yormuch Tunkarade, Yormuch in this Mudoa. Matape, Johnson, they go the Tenet Soya, the Tenet Chigo, Margin degrees. Ina, Igituma, the Tonda Red Tamas. This, the Ganga Pingres, the Sumudo. What a Tisungo, Kanjetape,
Drama key.
Igituma. Cherry, Omani Peme.
Oh,
Cherry Zuma.
or Yigi Drukma.
Oh, Igituma. What a Tenet. Taina, so soon Jipakia than Tendicala, sell to graze at the time, Domboco Bendena Sundu, that is a Pantoch boys, or that is a Sungor.
Okay. Ani dune gyawaran puche ani kare sumpore kongi ani
Tunkarla? 다 겨울무시 때빠 용엔도 아니 배 이그두마 동다래래
Okay. Lasso, dice che
댕이 이그두메 파인도 또 슬라고 디주고
Okay.
이게 된대와요래
So I'm just checking a note in my book. So one moment on the verse that we're on. 95.
갸다 줍게 받으래
Okay, probably it's the Gadavayana Sutra. Okay. So now we come to the third point within this extensive explanation, where it speaks about the great benefit that can come from having trained oneself in this attitude of exchanging, the self-cherishing attitude, changing self and others, swapping those out, the massive benefit actually that can come from such a shift in one's attitude. And here we have in verse number 118, this is why the Lord Avalokiteshvara, out of great compassion, blessed his name, that those caught in the midst of multitudes might be released and freed from every fear. So here we have, as our text calls, Lord Avalokita, which also can be translated into the protector Avalokita. And actually there's a lot of meaning when we look at the name of Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan, which is Chen Redzig. And Chen means I. And then Re means like the whole, the whole eye and eyelid, with that eye. And Zig means to regard and look upon. And so really what the very name of the protector Avalokiteshvara means is that with his eyes he regards all sentient beings. He is always watching over them to protect them from fear and clear away their suffering and difficulty. So even the name itself is a blessing. And actually Geshe referred to one of the sutras, and there is a note in my particular, I have the Padmakara book, and there is a note that says that in the Gandhaviyahu Sutra, Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan, which is Chenrezig, says, let whoever stands before a crowd invoke my name 3 times and have no fear. And so anyways, Geshe has referred to the fact that even in the sutras, the name of Avalokiteshvara in Tibetan, the benefits and blessings are spoken about. And so when we recite the Mani mantra, so for example, if we are saying our Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, or Tara, whatever mantras we were saying, but here we're saying Om Mani Padme Hum, and we say this with compassion, such great benefit can be accomplished when we have compassion and recite these mantras. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama, so tomorrow is his birthday, and His Holiness has advised for those that have faith with him, then what they can do in observance of something which is of great benefit and something that can dispel fears and difficulties is to, what can drive away fear and difficulty is to recite the Mani mantra. And this is, His Holiness's request and advice. And Geshe says, as the Mani mantra has so many benefits actually attributed to it, that, we also will speak about those benefits because it certainly is meaningful here at this time.
that 전주 네가 자잖아. 가서 많이 많이 중화돼 point of labos.
So let's stop here in the text and turn to that very subject of the benefit of the Mani mantra.
Ta Mani Padme Hum the Yigitu Duasi. Ta de la je a u masumure mekorji de siadara. Ota te tapelunga yisumdan tapelunga is kusuntu jerezige kusuntu soya yani mata barangi tubapo rangi lunga yisum matabe lunga yisum sunjenres.
So first of all, when we talk about the Mani mantra, and it's also referred to as the 6-syllable mantra, those 6 syllables are Om, Ma, Ni, Pad, Me, Hum. And so first we look at the first syllable, which is Om. And Om itself has 3 distinct sounds. So we can kind of divide it into 3 sounds. And these are symbolic. These represent the body, speech, and mind of oneself, or the enlightened body, speech, and mind of Chenrezig. Or we could also look at it as saying the impure body, speech, and mind.
Wada 제가 따도스죠. 마다벨lunga 있음 다벨lun가 있음 sunjeje.
So yeah, so it represents both either the impure 3 doors, body, speech, and mind of the practitioner, or the enlightened body, speech, mind of Chenrezig, for example.
Wada mani sidi nurbu sigora nurbu karzana tongi nurbu de 장주기 셈들이 고소 장주기 셈데 똥이 누르부들이 지데메 누르부들이 맞으페 지데기 구파실 거라 누르부여는 지데 구파실 거라 지데나 누르부여이나 누르부티기 타페 몰람 게디가라 타페 제 너로 론저 가리나 징기어와 장주기 셈데기 베 소남 랍첨보 상기 구에니페 타 karsoore zugu tubiadan sensan tubia tegiti chigore
zugu drupiadan
zugudan sonam gi cho lap chambo sone zugu tubia sensan bo sumju tangi pecha sambo geju tetuguare tongi nurbu de chanju gi semder da de mani se de chanju gi sem samdangore.
Okay. And then Mani, when we say Mani, this symbolizes a great jewel, a great meaningful jewel, and the great meaningful jewel of the mind of Bodhicitta. And so when we have a great jewel, it's something considered very valuable, right? Because we have something so precious and valuable that we can use it to fulfill all our material needs and so forth, get all the possessions and material things that we need to be, comfortable and provided for. But here, when we talk about the great jewel, what is of value is this mind of Bodhicitta is it's so meritorious. It is so meritorious that what the jewel of Bodhicitta will provide for us is the form bodies of the Buddha. The form body of the Buddha, complete with the major and minor marks. So the 80 minor and 32 major marks of a Buddha. And so this norbu in Tibetan, or this jewel of bodhicitta, is extremely valuable.
So ninani sonam gi so kuninani zugu namba ni tuya watati janju gi sem gi tucha de ore.
When we talk about the accumulation, there are actually 2 accumulations: the accumulation of merit and wisdom. Here, the accumulation that is attributed to this mind of bodhicitta which will be the cause through which we establish the form kayas, the two form kayas of the Buddha, is the accumulation of merit.
Oda pemme sidigala ta meto pemma sungore. Meto pemma de damla kigor dal damba gugu amarwa. Oda te najinchene ta zamutongbani de sungor ta so donla choni chunje ngumade zamutongbani. Zamutongbani de ngaranzo corona nyanenchena di gule kyaimba. Digi enipe corona tip 냠는제바이나 코로나 내데바갈 냠는제나 랑규레테 키에 기루임바 키네티게 단지 머리라페 신치네 랑이 에네베 타르바투 두고라 상기 고방투 두고라 초니나니 이시기 초 꾸니나니 추구두 거라 빼게 전부 작아도 아대 인도가라.
And then we have Padme. And Padme is symbolic of a lotus and symbolizes the lotus. And the lotus is symbolic of something that grows in filthy mud and yet emerges untouched from that mud. And like that, we have the profound, and this symbolizes the profound view of emptiness. So like, like that, although we are born in this tainted samsara, we abide in samsara, and yet if we are practitioners of this profound emptiness, so we have the lotus, which symbolizes something that is pure, that comes out pure, although, starting out in the filth. Here we are in samsara, and yet practitioners that realize the profound view of emptiness will obliterate self-clinging. And through that, self-clinging and ignorance, and through that they will be established in liberation and then in Buddhahood. And so this is the accomplishment of wisdom, and then becomes the cause to then accomplish the Dharmakaya, the Dharma body of a Buddha.
다 똥바니 세드갈라 똥바니 라디갈라 간디스 고고래 말한서 다 단다 낭출다 내출니 미틈바 차디오래 뭐니잖아 낭출터도 나도 나야데 간디지 난 거래 이빼 강가빼 율코랑원에 수투도 이연되겠지 율코랑원 있겠는지 가서 난거도 근데 땐 자완이니 요 말, 율코나는 거니 연대겠지? 낭은 아신지 요 말에 라브래. 낭인데 나신지 여이나 딱고 즉 렘베 동세야 돼 용해야 요 말에. 렘바마데 추두 라진기 tum되게. 근데 렘베 아니페 렘베 동 데기 대사도 맞고 봐세 돼. 내출들라 젠더나 지아라야 요말 단내 출고마데 중이 최탐적인 내루데 삼단드나 라지 요말에 대다다 난순데 미투바데 피지스케 켈링기르도 여름 승도 켈링도 그즈네 때인디갈다 말한서 내루 내 출고마데 잠모통바니 지디갈라 유문이 라진이 마두바 야 똥세데 땐니멘데게까지 시가 말해.
가래 계시시기요 말해.
똥바세데 땐니멘데게 유니멘데게까지 시가 말해. 나랑 좀 나가나 진지요 말랍 거마도. 맞아 나가 나진지요 말했어. 낭출대 견레스. 맞아 낭출내 나진 나가 나진 젠 대왕게 차단게 네 대왕게 답에 렌진 겐진의 차단게 대두스전에 다 걸어고 와.
Netsola di Rangjin Madrupa.
오, 네술라 낭나진지 요마라 네술라 카르나 지디질라 테니켄데 겨르마도 베 라진기 켄데게 쩨 요마라 라진 tum데겐지 깡깡 켄라 라레파 테데 라진 기송시 숨반딜레 야쳔베 레돔순니 지여즈 숨도
Dice pomando konda.
깡깡 켄라 라레 바스 추 간데지나 켄 유다 켄라 라렌데겐지 나 라브레
Hola so.
티 라진 기투베 똥와데 테데 라진 기동지 라진 기투베 똥와레스
Hola so.
라진 기 모두바레스 깡깡 켄라 라레바 테데 라진 기동지 숨반딜레 야쳔베 디에니베 좀데네 데니 소레 티 수야데 라진 기투베 똥와레스 숨겐데 베 얀쳔부티레 라레 메두 중지 얌템보 풀두 중아 와다 텐디지레 라브레 영원히 좀데네 텐진데 오른 중아 세데 좀데네 마도 진다 개바 진다 이게 숭투미도 강강 켈라 라레바 테데란진 kinson 숨반딜레 야쳔베 레돔 춘지지여 숭도 딜레네 베 비타가 텔리 야가지 가봐요레스 어떻게 삼당으로 먼저 하나도 윤도 소선 나가나진지 얘들 젠차데 끝이나 지기요 말에 렘바지 여이나 렘바지 여이나 제빠제 지리코 살로 루구라 코 제빠제 지리 거기 자시 제용도 갈라 매겐 차운도 갈라 고 렘바메 따라와 어디서 삼다 nembo 삼당과도 뺏게지 모래 동이 삼당 어떤데지 삼당과다
So we say that those that realize and practice this profound emptiness are those that will then later be established in liberation and Buddhahood. But now we look at this word emptiness, this profound view of emptiness, realizing emptiness. How should we interpret and understand the meaning of this word? And this is in regards to the very difference of the way things appear and the very reality of those things. Those two things are at odds. They don't match up. How is it that things appear to us? Things appear as very solid and independent. They appear as if they have an existence from their own side, an independent existence out there. But it's not like that. If it were so, then they would have they would be very truly established. But they aren't truly established in reality. If one examines these objects and one examines them very closely, minutely, when you really look, you can't find that object. When you look in that way, even modern science, physicists, quantum physics does the same thing. In examining matter, when you look for something, actually it all breaks down into particles, and the thing that you started out with is not there. So what we need to do is we need to understand the reality of things, the true abiding nature of things, and understand the way they appear and the true abiding nature are two different things. The true abiding nature is emptiness. What is it empty of? It is empty of any true establishment, true intrinsic existence. That's what's missing. That's what is not there. Things are not independent of themselves. Things are interdependent. They have come about due to kind of this chain reaction, a series of interdependent causes. Therefore, they appear. And the way things appear to us, like we said, is very independent, very true, very solid. Because of that, we get attached to things. We get averse to things because we hold such a solid notion of trueness to what's out there. But really, things are simply interdependent. And so also there is a beautiful verse that says, whatever objects do, whatever appearances there are, whatever things there are simply due to causes and conditions. They are not born in and of themselves. They are not established in and of themselves. They are unestablished. And this amazing, marvelous, perfect truth has been said by the Buddha, and there is nothing that has been said that is more profound than that. And so these things that appear have not been born that way. They have come about due to interdependent circumstances, or as it says in this, very beautiful verse, interdependent causes and conditions. It itself wasn't born that way. And so we need to understand that although there is an appearance of things, they are not truly that way. And that's what, that is what they are empty of being truly that way. And so actually, when we think about the word emptiness or the view of emptiness, it's very important that we take all of this understanding. That's what the word emptiness means. There is no true intrinsic existence of these things. They are certainly, are just simply interdependently have come into existence.
장주기 셈데다 동미도벨 타와니 줌둔들니 냠는 지야스고 다 답지 야르마치바 답지 줌두주바 와타티 삼 데데 삼당고.
Now we need to take both method and wisdom into our practice together, fused in an inseparable union of understanding of method and wisdom, being bodhicitta and emptiness. And we need to take these into our practice fused together, inseparably in union. That's the way we need to practice.
Wata do chene any mane transochi mane samata do chene tonda samdange tange mane do baina suzigula niji kiala twinchenda chagre any tene ke mane gala kaso sem ne debe kabla any semla fele jes pa chabodan semla jinang da ngamda teni guni yoe omare dei kebar chombo arta gundu duscheda any pe jinang ngamda de ko su motubeje ranjin de shu chombo chedegala de ngaji kenji meosam de jinang lego de ngamda lego de pa chabo ora kyonte kangaran jinjin tugo arta. 많이 던지가라 젠라페 가서지 패나 섬데 섬지 엔데라 드니 빠차고 균이 용해 코나요 말에 에 펜도 첨보하래
So we hold these in our mind stream as we recite the Mani Mantra, as we accumulate the Mani Mantra. And in that way, we have all the concordant conditions for great compassion to arise in the mind stream. And then once that has arisen, then for however long we can abide in that state, then for that period of time, then there is no fear and anxiety that can arise in the mind stream. And if we always carry Bodhicitta, the view of emptiness, and this great compassion in our mind, we will be free of fear. We'll be free of panic. And actually these things, fear and panic, anxiety, and so forth, these arise out of a feeling of self-cherishing attitude, this feeling of I, a strong sense of an I. We start with a strong sense of an I, and from that there is fear. From that there is anxiety, and then we go into just all-out crisis, panic, a fear of panic. But actually none of that can arise if one is reciting the Mani Mantra, having a recitation of Mani Mantra with a feeling of compassion, because in that moment then one is focused on others. One has a compassionate, empathetic mind that is thinking of benefiting others. So one can't even enter fear or panic mode about oneself. And so therefore the recitation of the Mani Mantra is so helpful, so beneficial. And so we've gone a little bit over. Geshe-la apologizes once again for going over, but does mention here that having an understanding of how to recite the Mani Mantra and the benefits is so helpful and actually beneficial. Oh, so today
internet manduri chekale test.
Oh, internet. Okay, lasso. Okay, Geshe-la ani that's go okay, lasso dene hong. Okay, o mani padme tis ani sar song dene hong
hungde de tapshi yarma chiba tapshi zundu jiba.
Oh, de hong. Oh, lasso.
De hung bhainre.
Oh, okay. So I just checked with Geshe-la. So the last section on how we take method and wisdom, bodhicitta and emptiness together inseparably into our practice, into an understanding. This is represented by Hong. Hong is symbolic of that very aspect of practice.
Om de samdandegala a u masum de la sondende mata belunga isum chungorwa mata belunga isum de la ngao nyambe tan ngao nyambadela ngajidwa di ngade ta chepache gore samdang gore ngaden dugu mindu kabandu karendu di indigala khasam gombulutu ke bage tijin shapa tapen nala didwa 풍민 풍부 레제메 텔라 풍부 텔테메 디진 샤바 풍데메 디진 샤바 까지 인저스고도 어다 디 티규르다데 풍민 풍부 레제메 텔라 풍부 텔테메 다랑게 민이나다 소소 대주네 카규르다네 내가 가서내지나 짐바선남 풍데인데 짐바선남 까지 인라브나 라야 민도아
Jinpa Sonam.
Man, Jinpa Sonam is Jinpa
Sonam. Yeah.
Ta Pumim Pumolezeme, Telepumbo Tedeme, Dijin Shaba, 다 Jinpa Sonam pull them in, Jinpa Sonam Kanji in the those Salina, Jinpa Sonam Pumben and Rayamindo. Or those Senatondam the Chen and those sometime, young Tombanila Quara like Cabaret. Now, sitting out to Bajit sometime the Gala, the Nipe Sende da Jinan, the Ganta Gangati, not to do with the Gion Dua. Those in a to do with the Measure Shagdua. What is some tangle? Those in a Kaji chalk, Kanich sometime the Ranjin Nardin, no to Jitawa. Dingim Majuina, the Nipe Sem Ranjing Lulu Chadio. Similar parts of a male zone in the match house on Roa.
Karemebacha, some.
Simply on the Tendu.
Oh, yeah.
Parts of the bay, young Avada, Tendi zone in the match house on Roa. Thing Arzinda, that to do but the Redua. Oh, the Susi mean to the Kajurta, something like Abutua. Yormuchi Tentangi Susundua. Ne some like now Kipo, you took a lot in this some tangore. Tampo mean Susi mean the Tinichu Digala Ning Jibojin into the Jugu Chicomna Rachabojidua. Mazzi pay Jinpa Sonam and Maranka the Ladoda. What do sometimes I pay Pendoyum those?
And so, returning back to that first syllable in the Mani mantra, which starts with Om. And again, this Om is symbolic of our impure three doors of body, speech, and mind. And, we talk about the time of it being impure. And this comes down to this thought of an I, this concept of an I. And so you can ask yourself, okay, where is this I now? Where is it? Who is it? How is it? And actually, di gompo ludru ki karis. Oh, that's right. Yeah. So it was in. Yeah. And so in Nagarjuna's text, the precious garland of the middle way, there is a very meaningful verse where, and Geshe has referred to this in the past, when in this verse, it's the Tathagata. So Nagarjuna speaks about the Tathagata, but actually we can put our, exchange and put our own name in there. But what it says is, he is not the aggregates, he is not other than the aggregates. The aggregates are not in him, he is not in them. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. What is the Tathagata? And so here we're doing this, system of analysis. And so Geshe says, he uses himself. And so he says, my name is Jinpa Sonam. And I look for Jinpa Sonam, and I search, but what do I find? I don't find any Jinpa Sonam. So again, we have this thought of an I, this notion of I am. And this is where all of our fear and anxiety comes from. And therefore, we need to eliminate it. We really need to destroy this sense of an I, this notion of any independent I. And as we've said before, that the source of all of our troubles, difficulties, and problems comes from a fixation to a self and a fixation to mine, so to me and mine. And when we lose this sense of me and mine, then we come to a place of a very relaxed and open mind. And not only that, then there's no one to get worried anymore. And so we lose that very source of that one who is worried. We lose that sense of an I. And so with this verse, and His Holiness himself has said that this is something that he does sometimes when, you know, he, at certain times, he will take this verse in regards to the Tathagata, and he will add his own name himself. You know, I am not the aggregates. I'm not other than the aggregates. The aggregates are not in me. I am not in them. I do not possess the aggregates, and who is the Dalai Lama? So we can take these last two lines and insert our own name and do this investigation and recite this actually as we do, as His Holiness said that he does. And then when we are constantly going over this in our mind, and we really a lot of repetition, a lot of familiarity here with it, then we actually will lose the sense of an I.
와다들인 정화 인상 기도할 던진도할 던진 또서가 제나 유치보래 아니 산이 겨울무지 중거리 첸제
Oh, so going back, di denzen ki kola kare.
던진
Oh, denzen. Oh,
다와
yeah, okay, yes.
가르 루나
It's a full moon.
full moon, yeah.
Yeah. So today is the 15th of the lunar
다와
cycle.
징도 왔다 eclipse moon eclipse
Oh, Dawa eclipse. Okay. Is a lunar eclipse, and so it is a particular dene dikapsu.
그와치는 유치보래 냠는 nembo 저건 데서 자 음악 같이 할래 레라요라고 그래.
Sa'u karele laware ganda.
자 음악에 같이 할래.
Oh, so it's said that during a lunar eclipse that the virtue that one engages in actually is multiplied, and also that it is an occasion where for one's central channel to open is easier. So if one engages in practices, it's more meritorious, and also kind of the physical problem with the channels and so forth are more open at this time.
Oh yeah.
Olaso.
뒤지체.
Geshe says, thank you, everyone.
장주 semcho rimboche 마게 빠나 긴규르지 개와 냠바 메파에 오늘 공도 배워서 가리라 그러이진 펜단데와 말인 중에 제레제원 텐진자 샤베 시테 파토 생규르지
Bodichitta, Geshe is frozen. So I will say the prayers. Bodhichitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is unborn, may it further increase higher and higher. In the land encircled by snow-white mountains, the source of all happiness and benefit flows in your person, Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyamso, remain until samsara ends. Just as the Bodhisattva Manjushri attained omniscience and Samantabhadra too, so now I dedicate these merits to train and follow in their footsteps. As all the victorious Buddhas of the past, present, and future praise dedication as supreme, so now I too dedicate these sources of my merit for all beings to perfect good actions. Okay. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take good care, everyone. Be careful out there.
Thank you.